Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another episode of Frankly Speaking. I'm, of course, is your host, Frank Zaberick, and as that great game show host says on his great game show, Steve Harvey on The Family Feud, we got another good one for you, ladies and gentlemen. Today, people who follow my show faithfully probably know that, about a half a year or so ago, during the 2022 midterm elections, I had a gentleman on. Well, first of all, my guest today is Jason Riddle. Jason, how you doing today?
Good. How are you, Frank?
Okay, and you're no stranger to running. First of all, you're a candidate. You've announced on Facebook, well, at least your Facebook page and now here, that you're going to be a candidate for the New Hampshire Congressional District 2, which right now is occupied by Democrat and Kuster, and you're running for hopefully the Republican nomination and the opportunity to challenge Ann Kuster, which would be November 2024. So you still have to get whoever runs in the Republican primary. It's still quite early yet. It's just like 3 months ago, the election just got over with. So it's going to be a while probably before the Republican thing fills up. If there's going to be anybody, we'll have to see what happens.
I'm making up for lost time. You know, I was away for a few months and I had some catching up to do, and that's why I decided to hop in a little early, make my intentions clear.
So as far as the catching up, for the people who don't know, who are probably new to Frankly Speaking, just to go over real quick, you happen to be in Washington, D.C., specifically at the Capitol building on that fateful day 2 years ago, January 6th, 2021. And in your particular case, you, for whatever reason, walked into some senator's office. You're not really sure who.
The Senate Parliamentary Room.
The Senate Parliamentary Room. Yes. And so anyway, there was a stash of fine wine there that you helped yourself to one bottle, I guess.
It wasn't fine wine. It was cheap, and they refrigerated it for some reason, red wine. I don't know what they're drinking in there for, but yes, there was red wine, and I poured a glass and watched it, and I also took a book with me, and that's ended up being my 15 minutes of fame following the riot as the guy who drank wine and took a book during the riot. Okay, well, also when you were drinking wine, you pulled out your iPhone and took selfies of yourself doing it. Of course, it's 2022. If you're going to break the law, you got to incriminate yourself while you do it. So 2023 now. There you go. And then when you left the Capitol building, you found somebody just outside the Capitol building saying, hey, you want to buy a book for like $50 or so, $40? So what happened was, I was in the building, I had the wine, and a police officer came into the room, yelled at everybody in the room. He said, get out of here, get out of here. And he saw me holding the wine, and he pointed at me and he said, chug that and get out of here. And I drank it and I left, and I took the book with me. And when I stepped outside of the building, the police were barricading everyone in the building now. So that I was essentially stuck on the grounds of the Capitol building, and I was standing next to a gentleman who said to me, I heard people are getting in there. And I was like, well, people are in there. They're there. And I showed him the book, and he went, oh my God. And he got all excited, and he's like, I'll buy that off you right now. I got $40. And I said, sure. And I didn't care. I didn't think anything of it. Obviously, I didn't have the power of hindsight. So you told me afterwards you came back to New Hampshire to where your residence in Keene, and the FBI knocked at your door. How did they trace you through Facebook, or how did they trace you? I was very open from the moment it happened. I did interviews, told everybody what I saw. I didn't know how big of a deal this was. That was the very night it happened. The Keene Sentinel was calling me, and I wasn't going to try and hide my involvement. The book, I did want to hide that when that happened. I knew that was the worst thing the day or two later. And when the FBI came, I tried to dance around it. I was like, yeah, I went in, I took the wine, and one of the FBI agents said, did you take anything else, like a book? And yeah, I just,
Came clean.
It came clean, and it was a good thing I did and didn't try and lie or anything, because he had opened up a folder, and boom, there's a picture of me holding the book right outside the building. Oh. So they knew everything when they showed up.
So long story short, you, for whatever reason, you chose to put your name in to run for Congress, even though now one of the things they says that you were, didn't they say you were banned from the Capitol building? One of your conditions on your release?
My conditions banned from D.C.
Banned from D.C. altogether. Okay.
Yes. I don't know if that's still in effect. I know that was during the whole process. I don't believe it is anymore. Right now I'm on probation. I'm not allowed to travel outside of the states. I still technically cannot go until I'm off probation. Obviously, an election to Congress would change that. But
okay, so how long are you on probation for?
I get sentenced to 3 years. It began in August.
Okay, so you would be on. You'd have to get elected in order to see how that happens. But so looking back at the whole situation, I guess there, well, first of all, Kevin McCarthy, the new House Speaker, the Republicans took over the House of Reps, which is good, and he's vowing to release the videotape of that, the whole scene. There's like 17,000 hours of, well, cameras from all over the place. But you could get somebody like from Fox News, Newsmax, Project Veritas, somebody like that could edit through that and get to the good stuff real quick. So would you be in favor of them releasing the videotape to the public? I guess Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are kind of against it.
Oh, of course, because the Democrats are continuing to portray this as this violent insurrection. And we almost lost, and it was so close and so scary. When in reality, it was. I mean, from what I saw a group of vandals laughing and trashing a room. That's what the insurrection looked like to me from their point of view. And of course, they don't want the reality to set in, which would happen if the video was released. They only like the certain little excerpts, especially in that tunnel. In the tunnel, that's where there was a lot of violence. It was, centralized in a location, and it looked from the looks of the video very violent. And that's the only thing Democrats want people to see. They don't want to see what the January 6th riot really was. It was just a group of jerks vandalizing a building.
Okay. And let's see, what else do they want to do there? They want to, okay, I forget what else. We'll get into it, though. But so anyway, so now comes, it was probably a wise decision for you. I know the first month or so, you got out of, I don't know if you got out of prison, but somebody let you use the internet, and you managed to write on your Facebook that you dropped out of the race.
Yes, I mean, I got pushed out. I spoke to the Secretary of State office, and you can run from prison. That's something I wanted to do. I thought it would be interesting, and they deliberately ignored me. I spoke to the Secretary of State. They said they'd send me the paperwork. They did not. I had my husband call while I was in there. They told him they'd send the paperwork. Again, they did not. And then the third person, I had a friend, a Justice of the Peace, call, Chester LaPointe. He called. They said they'd send me the paperwork. They knew where I was. Again, they did not. So, I mean, I can't prove that they deliberately took that away from me. But at the same time, too, they made it virtually impossible for me to run. I wanted to save face. I was in prison. I was sad. I needed to make myself feel better. So I had someone put on Facebook, you know what, I don't want to run, but I did.
Yeah. And plus, I think if you had your name on the ballot and you didn't show up for any of the debates because you were in prison, that would be a killer right there. I mean, if you missed one debate because you had a campaign fundraiser, that would say, well, okay, you let him forgive him for that. If he had other TV debates, we'll let him slide on that. But if you missed all the debates because you were in prison, they'd say, I don't know. But, Okay, so you're both. Well, as we spoke to before, you're a veteran, a service veteran of both the Army and the Navy.
Correct.
Which is interesting because people don't do two services, but I mean, it's rare they do two services.
You'd be surprised. It's actually, I mean, especially in the Army tends to have a lot of people from other branches. And also, I was an Army reservist. I don't want to make it seem like I'm traveling all over the world. I was active duty Navy, and then I wanted to stay with the military. The Navy Reserves wasn't a lot to do. I joined the Army Reserves as an 88 Mike as a truck driver, and 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, I got to drive fuel tanks around, and it was a lot of fun. I got to live the life of a truck driver 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. One year we did it for over a month, and it was a lot of fun.
But don't you feel, okay, wait, not only that you're a veteran, but you were personally there that particular day. When you hear like the liberal congressmen like Nancy Pelosi and Aunt Kuster say things that they compare that as the greatest insurrection since Pearl Harbor or 9/11. Now, well, then again, Pearl Harbor, like myself, I wasn't even born then. So I read that in history books. But with 9/11, you were probably just a kid.
I was in middle school.
You were in middle school. Yeah. So you probably heard about what happened in New York, but, you could probably grasp about what, America being attacked and stuff like that.
It was, we got out of school early. My grandmother lived in New York City, so I was calling her. And it's funny to bring up Pearl Harbor. She was blaming the Japanese.
Oh, there you go.
What had happened, but she lived in Staten Island, and she was fine. I remember when we went to go visit her for the first time after 9/11, the smoke was still burrowing from Ground Zero. And I think that was a time when it's sort of, right now you see the Democrats and the media working together, and 9/11, shoe was on the other foot. I feel like everything was a Republican right wing holding office, and the media backing them all the way. And you've seen a shift now. I think, and from my point of view, that's how it looks.
Yeah. But okay. Now we talked a little bit before, just before we went on air here, that we're talking about the actual deaths. I mean, in 9/11, for example, 3,000 Americans were killed that day. And in January 6th, insurrection, I mean, Ashley Babbitt, who was an insurrectionist, got shot by a Capitol police officer. There was another female insurrectionist that supposedly got stomped to death by the crowd.
When Ashley Babbitt getting shot, hearing about that is what made it, for me, the experience. At first it was disbelief. I'm like, is this really happening? Are these people really doing this? And then it was almost an apocalyptic feeling. I walked in, saw this liquor cabinet, and I just poured a drink and watched it happen. And then, but to me, though, it was still, again, just a bunch of people, angry people, taking it out on this building, ransacking a building for no reason. When I left, that gentleman who I sold the book was the one who told me, he's like, they pulled someone out of here who got shot in the neck. And when I looked up, he said that to me, and I looked up, and that's when the police were starting to barricade us in, and that's when it hit me. Okay, this is a big deal now. And then that's when I went from thinking this is funny to now I'm scared, because I couldn't even get out of there, and I had to walk. I followed the building. People were still just pouring in. And I was it's starting to loosen up on another side of the building, and I was able to walk away. Yeah.
And also, as far as the Capitol Police, well, first of all, no Congress or senators, no congressmen or senators were touched in that thing. And as far as the Capitol Police, I guess there was a guy named Sicknick, a Capitol cop named Sicknick. In fact, it's my understanding that Officer Sicknick was a Trump supporter. And so, as the story goes, first they were reporting him that he got hit in the head with a fire extinguisher. But that was bogus. But then I guess that night or the next day he went home, and he either died from a stroke or a heart attack. Now, that's not the same thing as dying in action.
Do they continue to update the casualty list of World War II in Vietnam? Do they say every time someone dies from Agent Orange, a veteran of Vietnam, do they Is it in the news that actually the death toll's this, or if someone commits
Exactly.
suicide? Actually, because that's what they keep doing with this riot.
Yeah.
One person was killed, one, and every time someone dies now, so if I go kill myself tomorrow,
Yeah.
they're going to be like, well, now it's this number.
Now that you mentioned, there was another cop, another Capitol Police officer who committed suicide either that night or the next day.
There's two, I believe, and I know there's a rioter as well who committed suicide.
Oh, okay.
And I think there was two police officers. I'm not sure. I mean, because again,
So I don't know if you want to call that killed in action or putting. That's why I think it's obscene and pornography for them, the Congress, the liberal Congress people, to say, like Nancy Pelosi or Ann Kuster, to say this is the same type of same level or plateau as 9/11 or Pearl Harbor.
I try to put myself in our people's shoes and understand where they're coming from. And so these people that are pushing that narrative, insurrection, and it's, you know, how close we came into falling into this right-wing dystopia. I don't blame them for pushing that narrative, because these are the people that locked down the country over COVID. They shut down businesses, they ruined countless people's lives, and they told everybody to go to Walmart. And that was the Constitution was just completely discarded by the people in power and thrown away. So I don't blame them for just pointing the finger at Trump and look what happened here. Look at this. What happened on January 6th is terrible, and it's not okay, and I'm not condoning it, and I'm not saying let's go do it again.
And you pay your dues.
And I did. I went to prison.
Yeah.
I pled guilty. But we have to ask ourselves what caused that. Do you want to just keep saying Trump? Fine, blame one person. But I know for a fact, I know my anger, my disgust with the government, especially as a disgruntled male postal employee, was these lockdowns, was being told where I can and cannot go, just virtually having zero rights. I had more freedom in prison than I did during the COVID lockdowns. And so if they want to, that's why they're pushing this narrative. And I understand why. And hopefully the people will start to see that too and vote accordingly.
Okay. One thing I just thought of, in fact, I had it written down here. The Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Republican Congresswoman from Georgia, vowed that some of the January 6th insurrectionists were held in prisons. Were held in prisons for like over 2 years, and they never got their day in court. And I'm looking at you and I say, you should, thank your stars that you had what you done.
Yeah, I don't understand. There are a lot of people that are fighting it, and they're taking it to court. And I can understand doing that, especially with the sedition charge. But when you're on camera, and sometimes people's own camera, like myself, filming yourself doing this, I took that book. It didn't belong to me. I wasn't supposed to be in there. I'm guilty as charged. So I don't understand what I'd have to gain from fighting that. I can fight the narrative, and that's what I'm doing now with this campaign. But criminal court, in which it was supposed to only be criminal court too. That was another. We're seeing the bias is completely within our courts. It was supposed to be. For the crimes I committed on January 6th, I was supposed to be sentenced. But the only thing they talked about was me running for Congress. That's the only thing the judge talked about. It was the last thing she said when she sentenced me to prison. She said, you're supposed to uphold the Constitution. The idea of you running for Congress, blah, 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 hits the gravel, sends me to prison. I was like, we're going back to these very archaic punishments, and just it's
I guess, in fact, it was last week. I should have taken the guy's name down and how many years he got. In fact, I think he did get a couple years in addition to being in solitary confinement for the past 2 years. And he was not the Viking guy, the guy with the Viking hat, but the guy who put his feet on Nancy Pelosi's desk.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should be thankful you didn't put your feet on that senator's desk.
Yeah, I was one flight away. I feel like the closer you got, the more attention you got. He made it all the way to Pelosi's desk. I just went in the first room and had enough and won. Yeah, he's a character, that one. Again, so that's a perfect example of someone on film. He with his feet up on the desk. He cut Nancy Pelosi's mail open. That's a federal crime.
Oh yeah,
and so and you take it to court, and now he's probably going to get more time. Just you did it.
Yeah. And another character there that never got anything. Ray Epps. He was there with a Trump hat and combat gear telling people, get in, get in, get in. let's storm the Capitol building. It turns out that Ray Epps is a husband to the executive director of Dominion voting machines. The voting machines that really caused the problem, allegedly, the alleged problem with Donald Trump's voting count to begin with. And now the spouse of that, the husband of that executive director, was at the J6, and he didn't get anything. I guess they interviewed him and stuff like that, but they let him go.
That's another thing that made these Capitol riot cases really unique, is because usually the way they base sentencing is on past cases. So they murder trial, whatever, they look at past murder trials. There's never been a January 6th. There's never been a storming of the Capitol building, so it was hard for them to determine who to
measure it against anything.
And that's when you start seeing certain judges' biases, liberal judges, conservative judges, their own political views coming out and being handed down through sentences on these people that have no means to. A lot of them don't have any means to defend themselves. And they were just, rioters aren't full with rich people. They're people who are there that support something, and a lot of these people are rural people, and it's they didn't have the proper tools to fight against this army of disinformation heading their way. And sorry, I'm sidetracking.
Oh, that's all right. But before I get into the next subject here, I want to digress a little bit. Did anybody like in the Army, Navy, or the Postal Service ever tell you never ever wear plaid on plaid?
No,
I noticed your tie and your shirt.
Yeah, my husband this morning told me I'm not supposed to do that, and I'm a rebel though, so I'm gonna rock my plaid on plaid with pride.
Okay, that's all right. I told you, one rule we have here is the guest and me, we can't wear green or else we'll come out invisible. So I tell people that ahead of time. But plaid on plaid is fine, but you're not a fashion connoisseur, but no. That's fine. That's fine. Right. You might get a lot of votes that way in the election.
Yeah, so. I'm going to get all the bad dressing voters.
There you go. There you go. So, other than, of course, you can't really hang your hat next year, I don't think, on being like a J6 insurrectionist. They want to know what issues are supported. What's your views on the issues? On why you're running for Congress this time around. And not only that, by next year at this time, especially if Kevin McCarthy, the House Speaker, does have the videotape released to the public, and then everybody will see that January 6th is nothing but a big nothing burger.
It's not the first time it happened, too, actually. If you want to go back a little further, Andrew Jackson, when he was elected, the White House got stormed. And they ransacked the White House. They trashed every room in the place. And the only way able to get everybody out of there is they took the alcohol out, put it outside, and the people went outside and they locked the doors. So there are a few instances where that was the White House. Yeah. I think in Louisiana, the State House got raided once after the Civil War, due to a contested governorship. It has happened before, but never has it been so convenient for a certain political party to use it as a powerful weapon. It's like, will the January 6th, is that going to go down? We're not going to hear it as much. I think we're going to hear it a lot more. I think the Democrats, it's going to come in full swing. That's the only thing they're going to have. They're just going to continue to push that. Well,
plus, and also if Marjorie Taylor Greene gets enough support to have everybody tried and give their day in court. I mean, other than the guy who put his feet on Nancy Pelosi's desk, I mean, if they charged him fairly and honestly, they'd have to let him go on time served, I would think.
They're also the people, the ones that are pushing this narrative, that this violent Pearl Harbor, ridiculous insurrection nonsense. 9/11. Whose fault is it, though? Is it Trump's or is it the people? Because they're the one, they're pushing to put every single person involved in prison. It's the first time in the history of our country where there's a riot, and they're taking every single person who did every little thing and trying to lock them up for it. Then so is it their fault or is it Trump's fault? They're saying it's everyone's. It's confusing, and I'm curious where they're going to go with it as the election comes closer.
Okay. So other than that, COVID. I mean, I don't know how much we can talk about COVID. I mean, do you think that the Congress should look into China further to make sure that they did indeed cause the Wuhan virus, or what we know as COVID-19?
My thing is, I don't want to see those lockdowns happen again. And
Yeah.
that was just, with mask mandates and just all these businesses. You want to talk about suicides that, they keep bringing up these suicides after the election. How many people committed suicide being told they can't go out, or they lost their business, they lost their home. It's something they want to go away. And I think that the Republicans aren't bringing up enough. I think that's what brought a lot of people to the Capitol, right? I mean, that was one thing I remember when I first got to the Capitol. Nobody had a mask on, and the healthcare shouldn't be politicized. But here we are. We see it was down the political lines. You saw someone who leans left, they have a mask on. You saw someone who leans right, they don't. And at the riot, nobody had masks on, and people were all next to each other and talking. And yes, if that sort of thing scares you, that's fine. Then don't go there. Don't go out. You stay home. Don't force it on the people. And that's what they were doing, and that's, I think, what culminated in January 6th. But the debate
Hunter
continues.
Biden. Do you think? I mean, it's probably worth the Republican Congress to investigate and subpoena the Hunter Biden's laptop, not for Hunter Biden necessarily, but for his dad. I mean, if Joe Biden was involved with all kinds of brouhaha and illegal stuff, the American people should definitely know about it.
It's funny. I was watching. I noticed the wording. Recently, there's the documents found in Biden's house, and part of that, is classified documents down in Mar-a-Lago, Florida, at Donald Trump's estate. And the FBI raided it, and all the liberal news stations were saying classified documents illegally held by Trump here. And Biden, when they found these classified documents, there's a very subtle difference in how they described it. What they wrote was, the first article I read was on WMUR, and they wrote, documents marked classified found in Biden home. It's very subtle, but with Trump stole these illegal documents. They're in his house. With Biden, it's some documents were here, maybe illegal, we don't know. And it's sort of this tabloid politics that I think definitely involves the guy like Hunter Biden, who it's sort of a sideline argument that you get yourself warped into, but it also can be important too, and especially if you learn more about the head of the state in the evidence with Hunter.
Not to mention, it should be entertaining, if nothing else, if the presidential nominees next year will be Trump again for the Republicans and Joe Biden again for the Democrats. Both are under like a special investigation.
Mike Pence now too, apparently.
Incredible. So that will be interesting. And probably something has to be done with classified documents. I don't know. Well, Trump as president, when he was president, he had the right to declassify all those documents. That's why I don't see Trump going to jail without Biden going to jail also.
No president's ever going to jail.
No.
It's never going to happen. It'll set a precedent, and then we'll be just locking up every president right after.
I mean, it was outrageous that they would the FBI physically raided Trump's home. That's unprecedented.
Our law enforcement is becoming a political weapon that is being used, and it started during the 2016 election, and the FBI was trying their best to tread lightly with the Hillary emails, but then they reopened the investigation last second, and who knows, maybe now this document is a payback. It's this tit for tat, where they're supposed to be impartial, but at times they often aren't.
Wow. So, one question, assuming, well, you probably go with other media, since you'll probably have like almost 2 years of your campaign here to go around. And I'm sure people are going to ask you, I think you're going to have a tough Republican primary, especially if Bob Burns runs again, Lily Tang Williams runs again, the mayor in Keene, George Hansel.
Yeah.
It's all how they feel after last time, if they want to run again. But can you cite me 3 differences between Jason Riddle and Ann Kuster? Assuming you become the Republican nominee, you'll probably be facing Ann Kuster. And you two, in the regular thing, you two had like a back and forth between you two. She used you once in a campaign fundraiser saying, this is who I'm going against, a January 6th insurrectionist. And then I think you wrote a letter to the editor of the Keene Sentinel saying, you don't regret what you did in January 6th. Hopefully next time you'll get it right. They'll get it right next time. And she got on your case saying you have no remorse. So... what are some of the fundamental differences between you and Ann Kuster?
I keep saying how I don't see this as an insurrection. I just see it as a riot. And a lot of Democrats push this narrative. I think what makes Annie Kuster different than other Democrats, though, is that I think she really does believe it. She was up on the 2nd floor. She had to put this mask on. And another thing I read was how she was fine right after the riot. She said, I'm fine. I'm good. But then shortly after, she comes out and says, I now have PTSD from the riot, from the coverage of the riot. Not the riot, the coverage of the riot. She was fine after the riot. She watched the news coverage of it. She watched the videos, and then that changed her. And I believe her. I mean, so when I watch the videos, when I watch this narrative that's getting pushed by the mainstream media, I'm just like, whoa. I wish that was going on in front of me, because I wouldn't have partaked in that. I wouldn't have walked in there. I would have been like, this is crazy. And I wouldn't have gotten out of there. Maybe I probably shouldn't have gone in there in the first place. Obviously, I can't change that now.
Yeah.
It's hard. I can't, Annie Kuster actually seems like a genuinely nice person, so I can't say anything too negative yet at this point. I mean, she calls me and she calls all the dirt she slings at me, I embrace. I'm fine with it. I think the government did worse to us than the history of our country. Probably you haven't seen the government take away more rights since the Civil War, when Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus, and that was when half the country was trying to leave to preserve slavery. Now it's over a China flu. It's ridiculous, and I think I was more of just a tool for Ann Kuster to stir a little fear. She liked to use my name and to get some of her followers to believe it. But I want to try and channel to the people that traditionally follow Democrats. I think that we have a lot more in common. And I think that's the difference between pretty much anyone running for, I shouldn't say I'm better than everyone running for office, but everyone seems, especially since the overturning of Roe versus Wade, there seems to be just this sort of especially with Don Bullock, deal with it, getting rid of abortion, and there's no room for debate, and everyone just seems hell-bent on winning their primary and not worrying about the election. They want to win a battle, not win the war. And I want to focus more on what we have in common. That's something I don't think Ann Kuster will do. I don't think she would ever even consider sitting down and having a cup of coffee with me and talking. I think she's above me. She's a politician. I'm a rabble-rousing criminal.
One thing she did, well, I don't know how much you followed of this past election, how much you were in prison, how much you actually followed it. But in the campaign, when she faced off against Bob Burns, who was the Republican nominee, she would, she obviously has a couple $1 million in her campaign war chest, where Bob Burns has a company of his own, and he's run before, but I don't know if he had hundreds of thousands in his campaign war chest, maybe even tens of thousands. But anyway, he couldn't compete financially against Ann Kuster. And we had all these mailers, TV ads, radio ads, newspaper ads that came out saying that Bob Burns is out of touch and too radical for New Hampshire. And they were saying if we elect Bob Burns, he's going to do away with Social Security and Medicare. So if you're the Republican nominee, you probably should count on that happening to you.
Yeah, well, definitely with the radical point of view, 'cause I think Bob Burns was the least radical out of everybody running. Yeah, I mean, I've obviously considered I'm the crazy insurrectionist guy, and then you have Lily, who's from China and female, which voting Republican is, it's an uphill battle for her, and the traditional Republican voter, a lot of them care. Social Security is something they want, so they're going to point out the money Bob raised, and he's out of touch. He's a businessman. He's got a ton of money, and that's something they won't have with me. I drive a beat up old Honda. I wear plaid on plaid. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have any money. I'm looking forward to that Social Security. I'm going to live off of that. So it'll probably focus mostly on January 6th.
Yeah.
So we're it seems to be dying down, but I think that's the only thing I'll hear about when I'm running. But I guess we'll find out.
Oh, okay. I was going to suggest too, if you do happen to build your campaign war chest, you may want to, in fact, I think I told you this on the last show, that you got an email address instead of a website. In fact, there are free ones. I think, let's see, WordPress.com, there's one Blogger.com, which, it's not an elaborate, like probably Ann Kuster's website, campaign website, but it's something that you could list your issues on, and you could have a back and forth with people who might have questions for you.
There will be a website. It hasn't been launched yet, a little soon, but there will be one. We probably will line it up with one of the debates and launch it on that day. But yeah, right now, just old social media. Give me a call. My number is 203-464-3984. You could text me. I'm from Connecticut originally, never changed my number. Love New Hampshire, though, and I plan on sticking around.
Oh, okay. So if you list your cell phone number, that's your call, and okay, that's fine. But okay, but still, I think, people who are shy, and people who might, want to look up your credentials at midnight or something like that. A website would be a lot better. A campaign website would be a lot better to see.
Yes. It's in the works. There'll be one.
The works.
Next time we talk, it'll be there.
Okay. So, but a lot of things too. It just seems that there's a lot of divide in America that you're going to have to work with as a candidate. A lot of like this, for example, at the time of this interview, there was a black gentleman who was murdered by 5 or 6. I guess there's a 6th black cop from Memphis, Tennessee. And they're calling that like CNN, MSNBC are still calling that a racist issue. And that kid was killed by white supremacists. Everything boils down to white supremacists.
The Democratic Party, since in the history of this country, was originally for the preservation of slavery. Then it became the preservation of segregation, which is, through Jim Crow, there were different forms of slavery in the South, the prison lease system. And then after civil rights passed, they're always going to be about racial tension. That is how they get their votes. There is a secret racist agenda. Just that's how they preserved slavery, was they told, white people who owned slaves, they said, we got to keep them slaves because if the slaves become free, they'll come after our jobs, they'll come at, so that, and now that's what they're doing, just the other way around. There's a secret agenda to make slavery legal again. And that was actually one of the most eye-opening experiences of going to prison. I was, you get hit with all these labels in the outside world. Oh, if you support Trump, that means you're racist and all these things. And I'm like thinking to myself as I'm heading to prison, oh my God, are these white supremacists going to be coming up to me, or are minority people going to be mad at me? And that didn't exist. I mean, racism definitely exists in prison, not saying it doesn't, but the general consensus is people love Trump in prison because his prison reform, 80% of people in prison are getting out sooner. And because we do have the most overpopulated prison system in the entire world, so it's a good thing that Trump did this. And I remember it was when I was the Capitol rider guy, I got along with everyone. It was pretty funny. I remember my first interaction with a group of Spanish guys. They were standing there, and this big dude, he was covered in tattoos, and he was talking to his buddies. He's like, "Yeah, we got to do what this guy did over here, storm the Capitol building. That was you, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, I like Trump." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And I was just a little Capitol rider guy, and it was nice to see people in person being helped by Trump, because there was I shared a cell with two individuals. Each of them got 15 years. Everybody there was doing a long time, and a lot of them should be. A lot of them did some pretty horrible things. But again, largest prison population in the world, more than China. There's something wrong, and Trump did something to try and fix this. And it actually felt kind of good. Yeah, I want to thank my judge if she's watching this. Thank you for my 3-month vacation. I enjoyed myself. I'm glad I got a chance to say that. I'm going to send that to her.
Ah, okay. So, yeah, that's pretty good, though. You had mentioned before, in fact, I think the last time you were on my show before, that you had you wanted marijuana law. You had hoped to push marijuana to be like legalized in New Hampshire. Do you still feel that way? I don't know, first of all, how much on the federal level you can push it. I think you got to push that on the state level. It'd be the governors and the state legislatures.
Sununu sounds like he's starting to warm up to it. It's just frustrating, I live right on the border of Mass and Vermont, and you just, the dispensaries, they put them right on the border. I drive by them all the time. You see New Hampshire plates pouring in, and there's just all that money, all that tax revenue just going to our neighbor states because of this old mentality of just legalize it, tax it, let's make some money. And they categorize, again, with our prison population issues, they categorize marijuana with cocaine and heroin. That's ridiculous. We have to start making some changes if we want to actually fix some problems. And I think that's, marijuana is one of them, a key issue. And there are some Republicans that are starting to advocate, and I think it's only a matter of time. There's always those handful of politicians in the states that refuse to get on board with progression, but that I will definitely be all for it.
Wow. Okay. So one thing, getting back to the society now that it's so divided in the country, not only with that situation in Memphis, but it just seems like when you have like people who, this cancel culture stuff, if they don't like you, they'll cancel you. And if you lose your job or something like that, you're screwed. I mean, what do you do for work? Let's say you're 30-something or 40-something. What are you going to do till you're like mid-60s, till you got to wait to get a pension and stuff like that? They can really do it. And they expect you to like nod your head and say, men can now have babies. According to what? Or they say there's 57, 58 different genders. That's crazy talk. I mean,
that was another interesting too in the prison. It was a male prison, but there were some males that identify as females. So they bent the rules a little, and those guys were allowed to have bras.
Oh Lord!
It's such a sensitive time. It's still, gender dysphoria still qualifies as a mental disorder, and if you think you're something you're not, isn't that what you are? I'm a homosexual, but it's easy to describe what that is. I'm a man who is with a man. That's plain and simple. But yeah. I can't become a woman. I can't do that. I can mutilate myself. I can go get surgery and mutilate myself. And then a lot of people that push that idea bring up the suicide rate of transgenders. They'll say, look at this suicide rate. And this is because you're not supporting them in their transitions. But the suicide rate amongst transgenders is the same post-operation as it is pre-op. And so, that's just because that's how politics works. People take someone who is going through this, puts them up on a pedestal, says we need to support them, and then they help them get the surgery they need and cast them off into the world, and then they end up killing themselves anyways. And because there's a group, not we, but there are certain people, especially in politics, that are pushing this. It's not acceptance. We're not being unaccepting. We're just stating facts as they are. A man is a man, and there's certain biological features that makes a man a man. There's the same for women, and then it leads into the cancel culture, and it gets really frustrating, and it makes it hard to stay on topic. But there is definitely, I think, plenty that we have in common. There can be areas where we can work together, Democrats and Republicans. The other. Especially with the racism, the police, you have some people saying, let's defund the police. And it's absurd. It's completely radical. And there's other people that are just, everybody should.
There are a few bad apples that are cops, no doubt. But to defund the whole police because of a few bad apples, I don't think so.
And I think there's a middle ground. I think the TSA. I think the TSA should be dissolved. I do agree that we do have too much law enforcement. I think we're becoming a police state, and it's like, let's just meet in the middle. Like, does anybody really feel safe when they go to the airport and say, "Have you met a TSA agent?" They tried to recruit me while I was in prison. I'm just kidding, but still, I don't feel safer, and I think the airports would be a lot safer in the hands of a private company. And then so those jobs don't go away either. So I think there is a way for us to spend less on law enforcement and meet in the middle. And that's my idea for middle of the road politics between Republicans and Democrats. Let's get rid of the TSA. Let's start there, see how that goes.
And getting back to the transsexual thing, it just seems that maybe I'm wrong here, that they can talk to like 6-7-year-old kids, especially kids that say that a boy saying, "Boy, I think it'd be cool to be a girl," and then a teacher or something would say, you don't have to tell your parents or anything like that, but we can make becoming a girl for you, make that happen. And first of all, you're going to have your parents' permission if you're going to have some kind of gender reassignment surgery or whatever they call that. Because once you transfer like a little boy to a little girl, and surgically or something like that, there's no changing back.
It shouldn't be in the schools at all. I think Ron DeSantis had that right down in Florida. I
Amen.
really like what he's doing, and I'm a gay man. I appreciated being able to get the right to marry as a grown gay man. I wasn't as a child going, that wasn't even on my mind, and it shouldn't be on my mind. I'm not saying, kids should be allowed to hear about things, but at the same time too, there's a difference between teaching and then there's indoctrinating is basically what some of these schools are doing. And it just pushes this deranged idea that you can just change your gender, or, you can be gay at 9 years old. Like, who knows? Maybe you do. Sometimes you got the kid that's got a little feminine features, but that doesn't mean we need to just bombard this kid with all this going on in our politics and cultures. Let the kid be a kid.
Amen.
Yeah.
Like my sons, for example, when they were 7-8 years old, they'd come up to me like within a 5-minute span. "Daddy, I want to be a pirate." And then 5 minutes later, "Daddy, I want to be a police officer." And then, "Daddy, I want to be a doctor." If they said, "I want to be a pirate," do I cut off his leg and poke his eye out because he wants to become a pirate?
That's a good example.
Yeah. So, kids change their mind. So it's not odd for like a 5 or 6-year-old saying, I think, a little boy saying, "I think it'd be cool to be a girl. I wonder how it'd feel to be a girl." You don't, the teacher shouldn't get in the way and say, "We can make that happen for you." No, that's...
Especially with all the presidential debates, you'll see especially amongst the Democrats, they'll start talking about transgenders in the military, and then they show that strong transgender military member. And then, of course, kids watch that and go, "Well, that's pretty cool. They're getting all this attention. I want to be a transgender special forces." And it confuses them. And
Yeah.
Ron DeSantis.
So is there, getting back to being the first one to pull papers, I guess you said you have a letter of intent with the federal campaign organization?
Yeah, the Federal Elections Commission. I filed a letter of intent last week.
So if you want to like raise money or something like that, you can, and then it's perfectly legitimate for you to do so.
Yeah, you offering?
Yeah.
We'll talk later.
Okay, there you go. But I think to be competitive and to be like a serious type candidate, you're going to be expected unless you hope to win the lottery or something between now and the election time. And like I said, because Ann Kuster will have like a couple million in her war chest. So
It'd be really nice if Ann Kuster would be willing to get together and have a little chat. But yes, no, financially speaking, I won't be able to compete with her, even if I, campaign every day, morning till night, all the websites up the wazoo, and it's, the money will be on her side. And
yeah. So from now till then, like one thing I like that Don Bolduc did. I mean, he first ran against Jeanne Shaheen in 2000, and he lost the Republican primary to Corky Messner. Corky Messner was the Republican who went against Jeanne Shaheen, and he just continued after that for 2 years until the Maggie Hassan came up for re-election. And what he did was he visited every single New Hampshire city and town. I have no idea how many towns and cities, but if in your case, you're looking at Congressional District 2, that's half of New Hampshire. That's not the entire New Hampshire. I don't know if you have the time and resources to visit every single town and city in District 2.
If they have a diner, I'll be there.
There you go. Or if they have like an old home day or a 4th of July celebration, that might be a good thing for you to make an appearance. But maybe instead of wearing plaid on plaid, maybe have a T-shirt, sweatshirt, and hoodie made up with Riddle for Congress.
Or I stormed the Capitol building and all I got was a stupid T-shirt.
There you go. There you go. Use your quick wit there. Yeah. And because usually, like, if you went to a diner and stuff like that, it's hard to, shake hands and talk to everybody. That's kind of an awkward situation. But if they see a message like that on your shirt, they might come up to you and say, that's an interesting T-shirt. And you can get a conversation in that way.
The VFW, too, that's a good place to go politic. You go visit the VFWs and the American Legions, and I plan on stopping in all of them and answering all their questions. And they're always heavily involved, and it could be a lot of fun too.
Yeah, and I know Donald Trump came down to New Hampshire here. Was it last week? And then again, that wasn't a big type of thing where he flew to like the Manchester airport, and there were like 10,000 people there. I think that was a closed meeting where he just had a handful of people there. But if he does have a thing like that, or Ron DeSantis or Mike Pence or whoever, you should be able to get your name announced saying, and running for Congress in District 2 is Jason Riddle. And they'll...
at the very least, I'll just be amongst that crowd, especially if there's a Trump rally in New Hampshire. I'll definitely be there. And...
there you go.
Yeah, I doubt. Again, though, I'm the poor guy running, so I probably didn't make enough money to get my name announced at the rally. But I'll be amongst that crowd, and if they start breaking in any buildings, I'll be sure to stay outside this time.
There you go. Smart move. But right now, it's probably best that you stay non-committal as far because Ron DeSantis does seem to be a force to be reckoned with. Especially since in the midterm elections, he did excellent in Florida. There was no red tide and red tidal wave or anything like that for the midterms. But in Florida, he did excellent. And that's why they're saying that he could be a force to be reckoned with for Trump.
Oh, that's for certain. And I think everyone's kind of sitting on one butt cheek waiting to see what Ron DeSantis decides to do. Because he doesn't really, you don't see him saying anything negative about Trump. And I think that's probably the biggest hurdle right there is Trump at the moment. And who knows if he plans on going up against him. I mean, I like them both. And Ron were to win the primary, I'd vote for him.
I also like Mike Pence.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see maybe some divide coming out of the Iowa caucus, but that's usually not likely. They usually start dropping out after like Super Tuesday, South Carolina and those states down there. But I don't think I'm going to put a bumper sticker on my car for either Trump or DeSantis until I look for some separation. I like them both.
I do too. Trump will pardon me, though. That would be nice. If
That's true, too.
I get a full pardon. I get off probation early if Trump wins.
That's true.
And I'm curious if other Republicans were to do the same, like Ron DeSantis were to go out and pardon some of the Capitol rioters, especially some of these guys that are getting years and years. I mean, 3 months. I was ready to leave after 3 months. I can't imagine getting years. And of course, you know, the response to that's always, well, he should have thought about that before this. Like, anyone who ever makes that comment, I want them to be at a riot. Like, let's see how much thought goes into the mentality of a riot, the mob mentality. It was the crowd it went this way. So I'm a crowd follower. Not a good excuse, but trust me, if you were there and you were in the middle of all this, there's a very good chance you might have been up in those steps.
Yeah. Because you would have got caught, people get caught up in the moment and the fervor, the emotion.
I thought I was being a spectator at the time. At the time, I don't think that now, but I remember I called my stepfather from outside the Capitol building, and I told him what I was seeing. Like, they're breaking in windows, they're going inside, and my stepfather said, maybe you should get out of there. And I said, I'm going to stick it out. What's the worst that could happen?
Oh, Lord. Famous last word. Yeah. Lord have mercy. Well, time flies when you're having fun, eh, Jason?
Yeah.
My director here has told me we have, about a minute left. And I would just say that if they want to get in touch with you, they got your email on the screen there. Riddle me this Congress at yahoo.com.
Yep, you can hit me up on Facebook too. I'm rocking my Hillary for Cellmate t-shirt on my profile picture. In case you're trying to figure out which Jason Riddle's which, that one's me. Send me a friend request, send me a message, tell me you hate me. I don't care. I'm used to it at this point.
Okay. And earlier you put on your cell phone number, so that's good if I write about that.
Yeah, you can put that down at the bottom, 203-464-3984.
Excellent, excellent. So thank you for being a guest. I wish you the best of luck in your campaign. And in 2024, around this time, January, February, I'll have to have you on again. So I think there'll be some other Republicans too.
I'll stock up on some more plaid.
There you go. There you go. So they'll be good. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me, and join me again sometime soon for Frankly Speaking. Thank you.